Chosen ones, what I'm about to reveal might shake you, maybe even change everything you thought you knew. This message isn't here by accident. You didn't just stumble upon this video. God has drawn you here for a reason. There's something He wants you to see, something He's been whispering to your spirit, a truth about who you really are, and the hidden marks that set you apart. Have you ever felt like you don't quite belong? Like there's something different about you, something unseen, something deep within that sets you apart? Maybe you've noticed it, a quiet whisper in your soul, a longing that others don't seem to understand. You sit in a crowded room, yet somehow you feel alone. Not because you're lonely, but because the things that stir your heart don't seem to move others. The conversations about success, status, and power, they don't excite you. Instead, you crave something more, something higher, something eternal. And maybe, just maybe, that's because you were chosen. But how do you know for sure? What if there were hidden marks, signs placed upon those set apart by God, signs that the world might overlook, but heaven recognizes? Today, we're revealing 7 hidden marks that only God's chosen ones carry. And as we go through them, I want you to ask yourself, do I have these? But before we dive into this revelation, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and boldly declare your faith in the comments by typing, "Lord, open my eyes to see your calling on my life." This simple yet powerful act is a step of alignment with God's purpose. And if you truly carry the marks of the chosen, stay with me till the end, because mark number 7 will challenge everything you thought you knew. Now let's begin. The first mark, a restless soul in a comfortable world. You see, the chosen ones of God can never truly feel at home in this world. There's always an ache, a divine restlessness. No matter how much they achieve, how much they gain, there's an emptiness that earthly things cannot fill. C.S. Lewis put it best. If I find in myself desires which nothing in this world can satisfy, the only logical explanation is that I was made for another world. And isn't that the truth? Look at Abraham. He was living in a prosperous city, surrounded by everything that should have made his life complete. But then, God called, and suddenly he became a wanderer, leaving behind comfort for a promise he couldn't yet see. What about you? Have you ever felt this restless pull? That feeling that something greater awaits beyond the routine of daily life? If so, it may be the first mark that you are set apart. But this restlessness often comes with something else, something unexpected. The second mark, unexplainable battles and opposition. If you are chosen, you will face resistance. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Joseph had a dream, a divine calling on his life. But the moment he shared it, opposition arose. His own brothers turned against him, threw him into a pit, and sold him as a slave. Why? Because a chosen life is a threat to darkness. The enemy does not attack those who are walking in the same direction as him. No, he fights against those who are walking toward their divine purpose. And some of you know this too well. You've faced unexpected betrayals, setbacks that seemed unfair, spiritual attacks that you couldn't explain. It's as if the closer you get to God, the harder life becomes. But here's what you need to know. Your battle is proof of your calling. If Joseph had never been betrayed, he would have never reached the palace. The very thing that seemed like destruction was actually direction. Could it be that your greatest opposition is actually a sign of your destiny? Think about that. And if you've ever faced battles that seemed too big for you, comment below, "God, I trust your plan in my battles." And now, we come to something even deeper. The third mark, a heart that breaks for what breaks God's. Have you ever found yourself weeping over things that others ignore? Injustice, suffering, sin. Things that most people pass by without a second thought. This is not normal. This is a sign of a heart that has been marked by God. Look at Nehemiah. He was living a comfortable life in the king's palace. Yet, when he heard that Jerusalem's walls were broken down, he wept. He wasn't a prophet. He wasn't a warrior. He wasn't even a leader at the time. He was a cupbearer, a servant. But his broken heart made him dangerous. It pushed him to act, to restore what was lost. And maybe, just maybe, your tears are your calling. God doesn't waste sorrow. If something keeps you up at night, if something moves you to compassion while others remain indifferent, don't ignore it. It might be the very thing you were born to change. But here's the thing. This mark often leads to something that many struggle to accept. The fourth mark. A life that feels lonely at times. Let's be real. Walking with God can feel lonely. Because the truth is, you don't fit in with the crowd. You can't enjoy the things that once entertained you. The conversations that once made you laugh now feel shallow. It's like your soul has outgrown the world. Jesus himself felt this loneliness. He was surrounded by crowds, yet he withdrew often to be alone with the Father. He had 12 disciples, but only 3 saw his deepest moments. And even among them, only 1 laid his head on his chest. If you have ever felt this kind of loneliness, not from rejection, but because your soul is longing for something deeper, know this: you are not alone. Because while the world may not always understand you, heaven knows your name. And your loneliness? It's not punishment, it's preparation. Let that sink in for a moment. If this resonates with you, write in the comments, God, even when I feel alone, I know you are with me. What if I told you that one of the most frustrating things in your life right now, something that has made you question everything, is actually a mark of being chosen? It's the waiting, the delays, the prayers that seem to go unanswered. The fifth mark, divine delays that make no sense. Have you ever felt like God is taking too long? Like you're ready, you're willing, you're prepared, but nothing is moving. You watch others get their breakthroughs, others step into their callings, others receive what you've been praying for, and you wonder, God, did you forget me? But here's the truth. Delay is not denial, it is preparation. Look at David. He was anointed as king long before he sat on the throne. And yet, instead of ruling, he spent years hiding in caves, running for his life. Why? Because the crown wasn't just about being chosen, it was about being ready. And maybe that's where you are. You're in the waiting room of destiny, where God is shaping you in ways you don't yet understand. But let's be honest, waiting is painful. The longer the wait, the louder the doubts. Have you ever questioned whether you really heard from God? Whether He still has a plan for you? If so, write this in the comments as a declaration. God, I trust your timing, even when I don't understand it. But there's something else, something that keeps burning inside the chosen. And no matter how much they try to ignore it, it only grows stronger. The sixth mark, an unshakable hunger for truth. Chosen ones are not satisfied with shallow faith. They can't just sit in a church, hear a motivational message, and walk away unchanged. No, they crave more. More of God, more of His Word, more of truth. This hunger is relentless. It won't let them settle for convenience. It drives them to ask questions, to search the Scriptures, to seek God in the quiet places. Look at the disciples. When others left Jesus because His teachings were too hard, they stayed. Why? Because as Peter said, Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. John 6:68. And if this hunger has been stirring in you, if you've been longing for something deeper, something real, you are not alone. You are marked. But here's the challenge. This hunger will cost you. Because when you pursue truth, it separates you. You'll start to see things differently. You won't be able to tolerate the things that once entertained you. You'll feel an urgency for God's presence in a way that others don't understand. And this is where the real test begins. Because there is one final mark, the one that sets the chosen apart more than anything else, the one that determines everything. But before we uncover it, I want you to declare something bold. Type this in the comments. Lord, I choose truth over comfort. There's one final mark, one that separates those who are merely interested in God from those who are truly chosen. It's not an easy one. In fact, it's the hardest of all, because to carry this mark, you must be willing to let go of everything. The seventh mark, total surrender to God's will. Have you ever noticed that God's chosen ones always come to a moment of decision? A moment where they must choose God's way or their own. Moses had it. He had the chance to live as an Egyptian prince, surrounded by power and luxury. But he chose to suffer with God's people instead. Hebrews 11:24-25. Esther had it. She could have stayed silent, comfortable in the palace. But she risked her life, saying, "If I perish, I perish." Esther 4:16. And then there's Abraham, the man God promised to make into a great nation. And yet, God asked him to do the unthinkable, to lay his son Isaac on the altar. Why? Because surrender is the ultimate test of trust. Jesus himself faced this in Gethsemane, the Son of God, sweating drops of blood, crying out, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done." Luke 22:42. And this is the heart of being chosen. It's not just about being called, it's about being willing. Willing to trust God when nothing makes sense. Willing to say yes, even when it costs everything. And maybe you're in that place right now. Maybe God is asking you to let go of something, a plan, a relationship, a dream, and you're afraid of what it will mean, afraid of what comes next. But hear me, God never takes without giving something greater in return. Abraham walked up that mountain, believing he was about to lose everything. But at the last moment, God provided the ram, because it was never about Isaac. It was about Abraham's heart. What is God asking you to surrender? What are you holding on to so tightly that you're afraid to place it in his hands? Whatever it is, trust him. Because the moment you surrender, you step fully into your calling. Now, I want you to do something bold. If you're ready to surrender everything to God, type this in the comments. Lord, I trust you with my life. We've uncovered the 7 hidden marks of the chosen. And if you see these in your life, it's not by accident. God is calling you deeper. The question is, will you answer? This next video is handpicked just for you. YouTube knows you'll love it. Or dive into this C.S. Lewis playlist for even deeper wisdom. And hey, don't leave without subscribing. Your journey has just begun.